My friends, in a world filled with endless noise, where opinions shout louder than truths, there is one thing that carries a strength greater than words. That is silence. Silence is not emptiness, it is not weakness. It is the space where the heart whispers and life begins to flow in its truest rhythm. Today, I want to remind you of the power of silence and how it can transform the way we live, love, and rise above our challenges. When we learn to embrace silence, we discover that it teaches us to listen in ways we never thought possible. Most of the time, we listen only to reply, not to understand. But when we stay quiet, we begin to hear the pauses, the hesitations, and even the unspoken emotions behind the words. This kind of listening opens the door to compassion because it allows us to connect not just with what is said, but with the truth that lives beneath those words. Silence also becomes a healer when life breaks us down. Pain often makes us restless, searching for distractions to escape from it, but healing requires stillness. In the quiet moments, the heart begins to mend without needing explanations or justifications. It is in silence that tears fall freely, and in silence that strength slowly returns. It is not the noise of the world that restores us, but the calm we allow ourselves to feel. Another gift silence offers is clarity. The world is full of voices, pulling us in every direction, demanding decisions, forcing us into a rush. But when we step away from all that noise, silence clears the fog. It is like a still lake where the reflection becomes clear only when the water is calm. In that clarity, we see what truly matters and find the courage to choose it. Silence also empowers us with strength. Not every battle requires a response. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to stay silent when anger tempts us to speak. In those moments, silence protects our peace and shields our dignity. It is not about weakness or surrender. It is about choosing a higher ground where our energy is preserved for what truly deserves it. Creativity and awareness bloom in the presence of silence as well. A quiet mind is fertile ground for ideas, dreams, and inspiration. The most beautiful thoughts come when noise no longer crowds the mind. At the same time, in silence makes us notice the simple miracles around us. The colors of the sky, the rhythm of our breathing, the comfort of sitting beside someone who understands us without words. These small moments of awareness are what give life its depth. And finally, silence allows life to flow. Like a river, life moves best when it is not forced, when it is not interrupted by resistance. Silence teaches us to surrender, to trust the process, and to allow things to unfold as they should. It is in that surrender that we find peace, strength, and harmony. When we stop fighting the noise and let silence guide us, everything falls into place naturally. When life throws us into storms of pain, silence becomes the shelter we never knew we needed. Pain has a way of making everything feel louder, heavier, and unbearable. In those moments, words from others often fall short, because no explanation can take away the ache of the heart. But silence provides a space where the soul can rest from all the noise. It gives us permission to stop searching for answers and simply sit with what we feel. That quiet space is not emptiness. It is the beginning of healing. Heartbreak especially demands silence. When love breaks apart, the mind gets flooded with questions, regrets, and memories that replay endlessly. Talking too much about it sometimes deepens the wound, as every retelling reopens the scar. Yet, in silence, the heart learns to release. Slowly, without force, the grip of sorrow begins to loosen. It is like a wound closing on its own, not because we rushed it, but because we allowed it to breathe. Betrayal too cuts deeper than any knife. The words of justification or blame can never undo what has been done. Silence after betrayal is not weakness, but a way to reclaim strength. In that silence, the betrayed heart gathers itself, finding dignity in not retaliating. It is in this stillness that we learn to rise, not with loud revenge, but with quiet resilience that no one can take away. Silence also teaches patience in the process of healing. We often want pain to disappear quickly, but healing does not obey our timelines. Just like a seed buried in the soil, growth happens in the dark, away from sight, and in its own time. Silence helps us accept that healing is a journey, not a moment. Every quiet day adds a layer of strength, even when we cannot see it yet. There is also a power in silence that allows us to connect back with ourselves. When we are wounded, we often lose pieces of who we are in the chaos of emotions. But in silence, we slowly gather those pieces again. We remember our worth, our values, and the strength that was never truly lost. Silence guides us back to the person we thought was broken, only to realize we were always whole. Finally, silence transforms the wound into wisdom. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every pain carries within it a lesson, but lessons cannot be heard in noise. They emerge in the quiet moments when we reflect, when we allow ourselves to sit in stillness without running away. That wisdom then flows into our lives as strength, compassion, and resilience. The very silence that once felt heavy becomes the reason we are able to walk forward lighter, stronger, and freer. Clarity is something we all search for, yet so often we drown in a sea of choices and distractions. The modern world pushes us to move faster, decide quicker, and chase more, leaving little space to breathe. In the rush of it all, we end up confused, questioning ourselves, and even doubting the very path we walk on. But when we step back into silence, we create a pause that clears the fog. That stillness becomes a gentle mirror, showing us not what others expect, but what our heart truly desires. In silence, the noise of the outside world fades, and we begin to hear our own inner voice. That voice is often buried beneath opinions, fears, and comparisons, but it is always there, waiting to be heard. The quiet moments help us distinguish between what is urgent and what is important, between what the world demands and what our soul needs. Clarity comes not from endless thinking, but from allowing the noise to settle, like dust in the air finally drifting to the ground. When the mind is calm, decisions no longer feel like battles. They begin to flow naturally, as if the answers were always within us, waiting for silence to reveal them. It is in these moments that we realize clarity is not about having control over everything, but about trusting that we know what is right when we allow ourselves to listen deeply. Silence transforms confusion into direction and hesitation into confidence. This kind of clarity also saves us from regret. How often do we act in haste, driven by noise, only to look back and wish we had paused for a moment? Silence gives us that pause. It slows us down just enough to see beyond the surface, to think not only about today, but about tomorrow. In this way, silence becomes a guide, steering us gently toward choices that align with our true purpose. There is also a beauty in the way silence connects clarity with peace. When we finally know what matters most, the unnecessary weight falls away. We stop trying to please everyone, stop running after what does not belong to us, and stop chasing illusions. That inner peace is born from knowing where we stand and where we want to go, and it is only silence that can carve this path within us. Ultimately, silence allows life to flow in its purest form. With clarity, we no longer force decisions or struggle against uncertainty. Instead, we move with a quiet confidence, trusting the direction that feels right. Life becomes less about chaos and more about harmony. That is the gift of silence. It does not shout, it does not demand, yet it clears the way so that everything can flow effortlessly. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than any words we could ever say. We often feel the urge to defend ourselves, to explain, or to fight back when we are misunderstood or treated unfairly. But true strength lies in resisting that impulse and choosing silence instead. It is not about giving up, but about protecting our peace from being scattered into meaningless battles that only drain us. When we choose silence, we learn to hold on to our dignity. Arguments fueled by anger may win in the moment, but they often leave scars that take longer to heal. Silence, however, preserves our self-respect. It allows us to rise above situations without being dragged into unnecessary conflicts. In the end, it is not about proving ourselves to others, but about honoring who we are without compromising our values. Silence also gives us the power to master our emotions. The ability to remain calm when provoked is a rare strength that not many possess. It is easy to shout, easy to respond with the same energy we receive, but silence requires courage and discipline. In that restraint, we prove to ourselves that we are in control of our emotions, not the other way around. This quiet strength has a way of unsettling those who expect a reaction. When faced with silence, people realize they cannot control you, they cannot disturb the calm you carry within. That calmness becomes your shield, protecting your energy from being wasted on negativity. It is not weakness, but an invisible power that grows stronger every time you choose not to be shaken by the noise around you. Silence also creates space for wisdom. When we hold back from responding immediately, we give ourselves the chance to reflect. We see situations from a wider perspective and often realize that not every battle deserves our attention. In that thoughtful pause, we find better ways to move forward without regret, without the weight of words spoken in haste. In the end, silence strengthens us from the inside. It is not the silence of fear, but of confidence, the kind that says, "I know my worth, and I will not waste it here." That kind of strength cannot be taken away because it is rooted in peace. It flows quietly, lifting us above the noise, teaching us that the most powerful response is not always loud. It is sometimes the silence that lets everything else fade away. Creativity blooms best in spaces where silence is allowed to exist. The world is full of distractions, constant notifications, conversations, and noise that keep the mind restless. In that state, imagination struggles to breathe. But when silence enters, when we step into a moment free from noise, the mind begins to open up like a clear sky after a storm. Thoughts that were once hidden beneath layers of clutter finally rise to the surface. In those quiet moments, inspiration flows effortlessly. Ideas come not with force, but with gentleness like whispers carried by the wind. Writers, artists, thinkers, and dreamers have all found that their greatest creations are born not in chaos but in solitude. Silence creates the canvas on which imagination paints its boldest colors. It is in the pauses, in the stillness, that creativity finds its voice. The power of silence is that it allows us to connect with parts of ourselves we often overlook. It removes the outside influence of other people's opinions and expectations, giving us the freedom to think without limits. When the world is quiet, our inner world becomes louder, more vibrant, and full of possibilities we might never have noticed otherwise. Silence is not empty, it is full of ideas waiting to be discovered. This is why some of the most innovative thoughts come in the simplest of moments. During a walk in nature, in the calm of an early morning, or in the stillness of the night. It is not the pressure of deadlines or the rush of noise that creates brilliance, but the openness of silence that allows creativity to flow naturally. Silence also teaches us patience with our ideas. Not every thought is complete in its first form. Sometimes it needs time, space, and stillness to grow. By giving ourselves permission to sit quietly, without judgment, we allow our imagination to develop fully, shaping into something beautiful and meaningful. In the end, silence is not just the absence of sound. It is the birthplace of creation. Every invention, every masterpiece, every breakthrough begins in the quiet corners of the mind. When the noise fades, imagination awakens, and life flows with ideas that have the power to transform not only us, but the world around us. Silence is one of the greatest forms of discipline we can ever learn. It is easy to speak every thought that comes to mind, to act on every emotion that stirs within us. but true strength comes from restraint. Silence teaches us that not everything needs a reaction, not every opinion must be shared, and not every situation deserves our words. This discipline is not about suppression, but about mastering the art of choosing wisely. When we practice silence, we begin to understand the weight of words. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back, and sometimes a single sentence can cause damage that lasts a lifetime. Silence reminds us to pause before we speak, it to measure the value of our words, and to ensure they come from a place of wisdom rather than impulse. It is in this pause that discipline grows stronger. This restraint also extends to our actions. The urge to react immediately, to respond out of anger or frustration is powerful, but silence allows us to step back, to breathe, and to respond with thought instead of emotion. It is in that delay, in that quiet self-control, that we prove to ourselves we are not slaves to our impulses. Discipline through silence is the highest form of freedom. In silence, we also learn patience. Life does not always unfold the way we expect, and silence becomes a practice ground for waiting without frustration. By choosing not to complain or rush, we train ourselves to endure with grace. Patience is not weakness, it is a sign of maturity, and silence nurtures it gently. Discipline through silence also protects relationships. Arguments often escalate not because of what was done, but because of what was said in the heat of the moment. When we hold back, when we choose silence over unnecessary words, we preserve love, respect, and peace. Silence becomes the bridge that keeps connections strong, even during disagreements. Ultimately, silence as discipline is about self-mastery. It is about knowing that strength is not in being the loudest voice, but in being the calmest presence. It shapes our character, sharpens our wisdom, and teaches us that control over ourselves is the greatest power we can hold. Through silence, we rise above chaos, proving that true discipline is not what we show to the world, but what we quietly practice within. Silence carries within it a sense of freedom that words can rarely give. So much of our energy is spent trying to explain ourselves to others, defending our choices, and proving our worth. The more we try to justify our existence, the more we become trapped in a cycle of seeking validation. Silence breaks that cycle. It allows us to step away from the need to be understood by everyone and instead rest in the truth of who we are. When we no longer feel the urge to explain every step we take, we begin to breathe lighter. There is a deep liberation in simply being, without constantly performing for the world. Silence reminds us that our life does not need an audience, that our journey does not require constant commentary. In those quiet moments, we rediscover the joy of living for ourselves and not for the approval of others. Silence also protects us from the prison of judgment. People will always have opinions, some kind, some harsh, some filled with misunderstanding. If we try to answer them all, we become prisoners of their voices. But when we stay silent, their judgments lose power over us. We stop giving them control of our peace, and in that stillness, we reclaim our freedom. This freedom extends to our inner world as well. Silence teaches us to let go of the endless chatter in our minds. The doubts, the comparisons, the overthinking. It brings a quiet acceptance that we do not need to compete or constantly measure our worth against others. We are enough as we are, and silence allows that truth to echo within us without interruption. There is also a quiet courage in this kind of freedom. To remain silent when the world expects noise is not easy, but it is powerful. It says without words that you are confident in your path, that you do not need to shout to prove your strength. Silence becomes your declaration of independence, unshakable and unbothered. In the end, silence sets the soul free, free from judgment, free from explanations, free from the endless weight of proving yourself. It unchains you from the expectations of others and brings you back to the simple truth of being at peace with yourself. And in that freedom, life flows, Not in the rush of noise, but in the calm of knowing you are enough without needing to say a word. Silence has a way of sharpening our senses and drawing us into the present moment. When the noise of the world softens, we begin to notice details that would otherwise pass us by. The simple rustle of leaves in the wind, the rhythm of our own breathing, or the warmth of sunlight on our skin all become more vivid. These small, often overlooked moments remind us that life is not just about big achievements or constant movement, but about the quiet beauty that surrounds us every day. In silence, we begin to see the colors of life more clearly. The sky is no longer just blue, it becomes a canvas painted with shifting shades that change by the hour. The smile of a loved one is no longer just a fleeting moment, it is a gift that carries warmth into our hearts. These details are always there, but only when silence slows us down do we truly become aware of them. Awareness through silence also deepens our understanding of people. Without the need to constantly speak, we start to notice body language, the tone behind words, and even the emotions hidden in someone's eyes. Silence allows us to connect on a level beyond conversation, where we can feel what others feel without them having to explain. This kind of awareness builds empathy and strengthens bonds in ways words often cannot. Silence also turns our attention inward, helping us become more aware of ourselves. It strips away the distractions and reveals what lies beneath. The thoughts we have ignored, the emotions we have suppressed, the dreams we have postponed. In stillness, we learn who we truly are, not who we pretend to be. This self-awareness is uncomfortable at times, but it is the foundation of growth and authenticity. When awareness grows, gratitude follows. Silence helps us realize that the things we take for granted, the laughter of children, the comfort of a home, the beauty of a quiet night, are not small at all. They are treasures that give life its meaning. By noticing them, we shift from chasing what we lack to appreciating what we already have. Ultimately, silence awakens us to the miracle of existence itself. It reminds us that life is not something to rush through, but something to experience fully. When we slow down and allow silence to guide us, we see that beauty is not rare. It is everywhere. All we need is the awareness to notice it, and in that awareness, life flows with a deeper sense of wonder and peace. Silence often builds bridges between people in ways that words cannot. When two souls can sit together without the pressure to fill every gap with conversation, it reveals a comfort that runs deeper than speech. This kind of silence says, I feel safe with you. I do not need to pretend or perform. That safety is the foundation of genuine connection, where presence matters more than words. In moments of shared silence, love often speaks its loudest language. A quiet gaze, a gentle touch, or simply sitting side by side can express emotions that no sentence could capture. The absence of noise does not mean the absence of communication. On the contrary, silence becomes the purest form of expression, carrying feelings of trust, care, and belonging. Silence also allows us to listen beyond the surface. When we stop talking, we become more attentive to the subtle signals of those around us. The way their eyes soften, the way they pause before speaking, the way their shoulders carry unspoken weight. In these quiet observations, we understand more than we ever could through words alone. This awareness deepens bonds and creates a closeness that conversation sometimes distracts us from. Relationships that embrace silence are often the strongest, because they are not built on constant entertainment or endless talking, but on presence. There is no need to prove or impress, simply being together is enough. When silence is comfortable, it becomes a sign that the relationship is rooted in authenticity, where both people can be themselves without fear of judgment. Even in difficult times, silence can be the greatest gift. When someone is hurting, they do not always need advice or explanations. Sometimes they only need another person to sit beside them in silence, offering quiet support. That presence speaks volumes, reminding them that they are not alone, even when words cannot heal their pain. In the end, silence creates bonds that are unshakable. It strips away the noise and reveals the truth of connection, that real love, real friendship, and real understanding do not always need words to survive. Sometimes the strongest connection is felt in a quiet room, where two hearts beat steadily, saying everything without speaking at all. Silence carries a sacred energy that cannot be found in noise. It is in silence that we come face to face with our true selves, stripped of masks, titles, and expectations. In the quiet, we realize that beneath all the roles we play, there is a soul longing for peace and connection. This awareness is the first step towards spiritual power, because before we can reach something greater, we must first return to ourselves. When we sit in silence, we often feel an unexplainable stillness that goes beyond the physical. Our breathing slows, our thoughts soften, and for a brief moment, we touch a space within us that feels infinite. This is why prayer and meditation are practiced in silence. Because the divine speaks in whispers, not in shouts. Only when the world is quiet can we hear the voice of guidance rising from within. Silence also teaches us surrender. We are so used to trying to control everything in life, pushing and forcing outcomes, that we forget the beauty of letting go. In silence, we learn to release our grip and trust that there is a higher order at work. That surrender is not weakness, it is strength. For it takes great courage to place our worries into unseen hands and believe that we are being carried. This surrender opens the door to a deeper kind of strength, one that is not based on physical ability or external success, but on inner peace. When silence fills us, fear loses its power, and anxiety begins to fade. We realize that no matter what chaos surrounds us, there is a still place within that cannot be shaken. This inner calm becomes our spiritual armor, protecting us in times of uncertainty. Silence also makes us aware of connection beyond ourselves. It reminds us that we are part of something vast and timeless, that we are not separate from the universe, but woven into its rhythm. In the quiet, we feel that we belong to a greater story, one that stretches beyond what the eyes can see. This awareness gives life deeper meaning and makes every moment sacred. Ultimately, silence transforms into a source of spiritual power because it grounds us in truth. It reminds us that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it simply breathes quietly, trusting in the unseen. In silence, we meet ourselves, we meet peace, and we meet the presence of something greater than us. And once we touch that space, life begins to flow not with fear, but with faith. Life is very much like a flowing river, always moving forward, always carving its path, whether we notice it or not. When we resist its current, if thrashing against it with fear, doubt, and noise, we create turbulence that exhausts us. But when we allow silence to guide us, when we stop fighting and simply let go, the flow of life carries us with far less struggle. In that stillness, we discover that we do not have to control every detail. Sometimes, we only need to trust the current. Silence teaches us to surrender to this natural rhythm. Instead of filling every pause with worry or trying to force things into place, we learn to wait, to listen, and to trust. Just as a river does not question where it is going, we too can learn to flow without resistance. The quiet inside us becomes a compass, pointing us toward the right direction without the chaos of overthinking. When we move with silence, obstacles no longer feel like permanent walls. Just as water flows around rocks and finds another path, we too can adapt and move forward gracefully. Silence gives us patience to pause when needed and strength to continue when the time is right. The more we flow, the less energy we waste fighting battles that were never ours to win. This flow also brings peace into our relationships. Instead of forcing people to understand us, instead of arguing endlessly to prove our point, silence allows harmony to return. we begin to realize that not every situation needs fixing, not every person needs convincing. Sometimes the most powerful choice is to remain silent and let the truth reveal itself in time. Silence also opens doors for opportunities to come naturally. When we are restless, we push too hard and often miss the signs that life is offering us. But in silence, we become more aware, more receptive, more willing to see what is already unfolding. Just like a river flows effortlessly into the ocean, silence allows our journey to merge beautifully with what is meant for us. In the end, silence reminds us that life does not need to be forced. Everything has its time, its pace, and its purpose. When we surrender to silence, we allow life to flow the way it was always meant to, steadily, naturally, and peacefully. And in that flow, we find not only direction but also the grace to enjoy the journey without fear of where it will take us. So, my dear friends, embrace silence. Do not fear it. Do not mistake it for emptiness. In silence lies your healing, your strength, your freedom, your flow. The power of silence does not just change the way you live, it changes who you are.